Geneva. It's always good to know your audience, so the survey is very helpful to me. And I'd like to welcome back those who were with us a month ago and welcome all new participants. As Geneva said, this is a three-part series on an introduction to the life and writings of Thomas Merton, American Trappist monk of the Abbey of Gethsemane. He lived from 1915 to 1968. Um, the first session we had on Merton biography and looked at his writings on peace and war, social justice, especially racism. During today's session, we want to take a brief look at Merton's engagement in interreligious dialogue. I think we need to keep in mind as we read Merton or become familiar with him, the underlying basis of his work, of his writings, and his thought and his engagement was always particularly spiritual. He saw the connection between all of human life and how important a spirituality or worldview is, especially with social justice and social consciousness, interreligious dialogue. And next month, we'll look at his thoughts on spirituality, particularly contemplative spirituality. Today's session has been condensed to just an hour or so. I went too long the last time, and I've taken some corrective action here. But it will include a look at two excerpts of Merton's writings and a few questions for all of you as participants to share a response or your own experience with interreligious engagement. A few handouts were sent out to you. I like to make reference to that to provide you with, first of all, a chronology of the life of Thomas Merton, especially for those, this is the first time. We won't spend any time today going into his biography, but that's an outline of significant dates in Merton's life. I'd like to point out to you at the bottom of the page, I made a note that during Merton's lifetime, 33 of his literary works were published, and 32 of his works were published posthumously. And I also wanted to point out that these publications include 5 volumes of his letters and 7 volumes of his journals. And I don't have a list, but you can certainly, I'll share more about that later. But all the books who have been written, all the writings about Merton by numerous individuals. Apparently Merton is so much interest in Merton that doctoral thesis, master's thesis have been written. And at the Merton Center in Louisville, you can find a reference to that. There's extensive writings about Merton. So 50, 60 years after his death, he still is very much the focus and interest of so many people. A second handout are the 2 excerpts of Merton's writings that we will review today. I hope you had a chance to read those and reflect on them. And there's some questions. You will receive, following this session today, Geneva will send out another handout that is a suggested reading list of Merton's books that particularly focus on his interreligious activity, his contacts, and so forth. And also, I wanted to point out again, there's numerous information, of volumes of information about Merton and his writings at the website at the Merton Center, www.merton.org. You will find so much information. It's that's available. So, an objective of this session today is to reinforce the idea that one can enrich one's faith tradition through encountering the wisdom found in other religions and worldviews. Also, it is hoped that each of us can appreciate with more intentionality the process of dialogue in our interreligious encounters, and especially what we can learn from simply listening. So let me give you a brief overview, notes I put together on Merton on interreligious dialogue. A review of Thomas Merton's extensive correspondence and journals reveals that in the 1950s, Merton began a long-term study of other religions, Hinduism, Taoism, Confucianism, Islam, and especially Zen Buddhism. He was initially inspired and challenged by reading some of the works of Mahatma Gandhi, that one can find a deeper root of one's own religious tradition by becoming immersed in other religions and then returning home to see one's own tradition with a transformed consciousness and awareness. In the late 50s, Merton contacted the Japanese Zen scholar D.T. Suzuki, who was popularizing Zen in the West. And they began a long discussion on the similarities and differences between Zen Buddhism and Christianity. Merton began his interfaith encounters with a sense of humility, as he expressed to Suzuki, "I will not be so foolish as to pretend to you that I understand Zen. To be frank, I hardly understand Christianity." You have to appreciate that comment in Merton and his use of humor. But Suzuki was impressed by Merton's prolonged grasp, profound grasp of both Zen and Christianity. Eventually, Merton began to frame his quest as wanting to become a good Buddhist, as I can, because only with immersion inside the perspective and experience of another's faith could he learn to, in depth, that which would drive him deeper into his own Christianity. I don't mean to imply that he was wanting to become a Buddhist, but he really wanted to understand Buddhism and involve himself in its practices. A more extensive view of Merton's correspondence, which I've been referencing, gives you how broad Merton's contacts were. That included such individuals as Abraham Joshua Heschel, the Jewish theologian, Buddhist Thich Nhat Hanh, the Dalai Lama, and I just mentioned D.T. Suzuki. He also had contact with John Woo the Taoist philosopher. Abdul Aziz, A-Z-I-Z, the Sufi, the Muslim Sufi mystic. June Youngblood, the Quaker, plus Russian Orthodox figures, Hindu, Anglican, Protestant, uh, various religious figures and writers. Several of these individuals visited Merton at the Abbey of Gethsemane in Kentucky. So there were some face-to-face encounters he had for one-on-one discussion in person. So Thomas Merton modeled a way of encounter and dialogue in his conversations and in his correspondence with so many religious individuals and traditions. But he was deeply rooted in his own tradition. He was open and receptive to the wisdom of the world's religions. Merton embodied the spirit that is essential to building unity. He was open to the experience and perspective of others and respectful of their beliefs and practices. He was also clear and firm in his own faith convictions, searching for common ground. He knew well does not mean discounting one's own roots. He was very important in emphasizing that all the time. He encountered criticism within the Catholic Church, even with the order at times. He was going too far in his writings and suggestions. But he knew that was risky, but he felt driven so much to give expression to this need. He recognized the value and possibility of contemplative dialogue also between monastics and contemplatives of other religious traditions, and hoped that through such dialogue, monastics would strive for intermonastic communion and a bonding of the broader spiritual family. He could always reference how positive impact this can have on humanity and our life on this planet. He held out hope that this bond would demonstrate the fundamental unity of humanity to a world that was becoming ever more materialistic and divided. The finality, the finale of Merton's interreligious engagement was his Asian journal from October to December 1968. Excuse me, I think I lost my place here. This Asian journey is so much chronicled in his Asian journal. This is on the reading list, suggested reading. He had the opportunity to meet and dialogue with the Dalai Lama and many Christian and Buddhist monastics. He died on December 10, 1968 in Bangkok, Thailand by accidental electrocution following his giving a conference at of monks, both Eastern and Western monks. He went to his room and showered, and he apparently touched an electric fan that was on and was electrocuted. I want to point out too that I found that just within the last year, a book was published by a Japanese Christian monk named J. Park, entitled Thomas Merton's Encounter with Buddhism and Beyond. Merton's experience in Asia that fall, a few months before he died, has had profound implications in increasing, especially Christian and Buddhist dialogue. Park explores Thomas Merton's dialogue with Buddhism, getting to the very heart of it as only a fellow monk who was steeped in the daily monastic rhythms of prayer and work can do. Park builds on Merton's legacy, suggesting important ways monastic and contemplative interreligious dialogue can continue to develop in the 20th century and beyond. I highly recommend that book. I just ordered it myself this past week, and I really want to understand more about Merton's experience with Eastern religions, particularly Buddhism. So in conclusion, Merton held fast in his Christian beliefs, no doubt about it, but felt the contemporary church, both all Christian denominations, particularly the Catholic Church, had to take seriously the reality of the diverse religions in the world. In fact, for him, religious dialogue was a spiritual necessity in the nuclear age because the West needed the spiritual heritage of the East, or else the West would hasten the tragedy that threatens man and his civilizations. The opening of the Catholic Church to dialogue and collaboration with other religions really came through the work of the Second Vatican Council in Rome in 1962 to 1963. The writings of the Council on Catholicism and its relations to non-Christian religions gave formal approval for what Merton was already doing. Merton found the connection point between Christianity and Buddhism, not in doctrines and intellectual formulas, but in the rejection of the false self and direct experience through contemplation. We will talk more about Merton's thought on contemplation, like I mentioned in our final session. Thomas Merton's, especially towards the end of his life, recognized the value and possibility of contemplative dialogue between monastics and contemplatives of other religions, and was hoping that this dialogue, that monastics would strive for intermonastic communion and a bonding of the broader spiritual family. He held out hope that this would demonstrate the fundamental unity of humanity in the world. So I want to conclude my remarks now and draw your attention to the handouts. I will read each selection, and then between that, the first reading, there are 5 questions, and I invite you to respond to one or more of them. And let's see where that goes, and hopefully we can have not just sharing, but some dialogue. The first selection comes from Merton's book, Conjectures of a Guilty Bystander. highly recommended for your reading. And it kind of reinforces the comments that I had just made. It's dated 1966. Merton writes, I will be a better Catholic, not if I can refute every shade of Protestantism, but if I can affirm the truth in it and still go further. So too with the Muslims, the Jews, the Hindus, the Buddhists. This does not mean syncretism, indifferentism, and the vapid and careless friendliness that accepts everything by thinking of nothing. There is so much that one can affirm and accept. But first, one must say yes, where one really can. If I affirm myself as a Catholic merely by denying all that is Muslim, Jewish, Protestant, Hindu, Buddhist, etc., in the end, I will find that there is not much left for me to affirm as a Catholic, and certainly no breath of the Spirit with which to affirm it. So, Geneva, if you would moderate. Assist me in moderating.
Sure. Do you want me to read the question or?
Well, I suggested that if participants wanted to respond to those questions or to one of them or more.
Sure. Can everyone see the questions?
I guess we can see.
Maybe we should read through them just in case anyone's on their phone, like calling in and can't.
Okay, I can do that. Yeah. The first question, why do you think that Merton feels that he will be a better Catholic if he can affirm truth in other religions rather than simply refuting their basic tenets?
If anyone wants to.
Second question, yeah.
If anyone wants to respond, they can just unmute themselves. Looks like Barbara might have unmuted herself. Do you have a comment, Barbara?
Yes. Well, I have been very active in interfaith work here in Indianapolis, and I'm with a group that has met for over 10 years, and we have Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Christian Scientists, Mormons. And it's been a wonderful spiritual growth experience. And I so think that my own belief has been so enriched by that, because I think the closer you get to contemplative truths and wisdoms that you find from contemplative truth, the more similar they are.
Absolutely.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Does anyone else have any comments on that question? Again, you can unmute yourself. Anne?
As a non-Catholic, it strikes me that he's speaking from a very Catholic position in that, and also from being somebody who is part of a religious order. So it feels as if that's a comment to justify what is his natural interest and inclination, rather than, if you want, a necessary outcome of our exploration of faiths other than our own.
Okay. Yeah, I think Merton, go ahead.
It looks like Carol unmuted herself. Did you have something to add?
I was just looking at as he says, if I affirm myself as a Catholic, really.
We're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. Could you maybe?
Sorry.
There you go. Okay.
How's that? Is that better?
That's
Oh, now
fine.
the dogs. Let them go. I began to think about the fact that his affirmation of his Catholicism could be coming from the understanding more about other religions and understanding their premises helps him to settle in. And I think that we have, I always used to joke that God gave us denominations just to deal with our personalities, and sometimes I think that that's part of how we go through life. It's not so much that he's commenting on that he's commenting on being a Catholic as opposed to a Muslim, a Jew, or whatever, but rather that it helps him affirm where he's at, not that he's in disagreement, because he says he finds things that are similar, but that's what's good for him.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Ellen, it looks like you might have unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to add on, I guess, basically onto what Anne had said, and it's just kind of follows this sequence. I mean, that clearly being a better Catholic was his intention, his goal. I mean, but what he learned, through this kind of dialogue and practice can be applied to anyone, to be a better person, be a better agnostic, to be a better this, to be a better that. I think that's just semantics, that he chose, his choice is to be a better Catholic.
Thank you. Looks like we have one more person who might have a comment. Enoch? I might be pronouncing that incorrectly.
Well, yeah. Yeah, my name is Enoch, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, basically I built up on some of the insights that have already been shared. One thing is I felt that Merton has been testifying to his experience of the mystery, which has been shared, among common humanity, as well as, different religious tradition. I was a Protestant pastor. I become religious in the Catholic Church, and been involved in the Parliament of World Religions and other interfaith traditions, interfaith events. I think the few things, is about authenticity, authenticity of being to your tradition, but also, which is basically the same has been expressed already. We talk about identity politics all the time, but the identity somehow, in this day and age, has become some sort of ideological thing, which excludes us, But for Merton, the better you know about your own tradition, your faith, the better you come closer to the mystery, and the better you understand your faith tradition. And not only understanding, but transforming. By going into dialogue, having that mutual transformation of your faith tradition. And the second thing is about connectivity. So authenticity and identity is the first thing. The second thing is about connectivity, with other expression of this mystery. And the third thing is about love, and that if there's some common theme, love may be one entry point into encountering with this primordial mystery. So that's my very superficial understanding of Merton and some attempts of interreligious dialogues. But one more thing though, it's about where the ignorance would be the, I forgot the question. The connection between ignorance and religious intolerance. I think there's definitely, a connection between ignorance and religious dialogue. But some who are, quite well informed about other religion can be also very intolerant because of their agenda and, and other priorities. So yeah, I think there are more nuances and layers, to this question than just ignorance. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Becky, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say that in knowing someone else from a different religion, such as the Muslim religion, and dialoguing with them about your own religion and theirs strikes up I don't know how to say this, strikes up a respect and desire, because the other is very enthusiastic and very committed. Sometimes helps us to question our own dedication and practice of our own religion or our own faith. And I think it's connected to, it's an experience, it's experiential when you dialogue with another and find their enthusiasm and dedication.
Thank you, Becky. Diane, did you have a comment?
Yes, I'd like to mention something that a group of fellow friends of mine in the Protestant Church, we're the Presbyterian Church USA and Disciples of Christ, have been working on as a spiritual community in the Midwest. And see, Vern is on from Kansas City, and I had been, he's a leader in Kansas City. I had been to an event that he had helped work with, which was an interfaith celebration of the first day of the year. I think it was actually the day before the first day of the year, which has been going on for some time. And we began that in our Center for Spirituality in St. Joseph. And we've done a couple other events, International Day of Peace, and had invited some friends, acquaintances, and community leaders who are interfaith. We have a Jewish community just a couple blocks away, also Muslim community and Baha'i were invited. And so out of that, it was just a wonderful experience. And we had applied to the Presbyterian Church in Louisville there to represent an extension of that in what's called a new worship community. We had just finished that up. And we were just told 2 weeks ago that we were turned down because it was they were too concerned about us being interreligious. Well, we're not backing down. We're continuing to move forward, because I think it is so important to acknowledge the great wisdom in all these different religions, certainly including Buddhist religion and Hinduism. My daughter teaches yoga, and she's learned her yoga through work from Hinduism and from Buddhism in Colorado. So we appreciated that that interfaith experience. We want to continue doing that, whether it's through the Presbyterian Church or on our own as an independent agent. we're not backing down, because it's such a beautiful thing. And I appreciate Thomas Merton's work in that. I've also worked with Matthew Fox, who has been probably the main one who has encouraged it as well. So thank you very much.
So, let's see, Anita?
Yes. My observation about this is based on experiences in different churches and in different relationships, in which when you are accustomed to something, when you're part of it all the time, when you are there all the time, or you are with certain people all the time, there's certain things you get accustomed to, and you don't even see them anymore. You don't even realize that they're there anymore. They just, they kind of fade into the woodwork. They just become part of the wallpaper. And I think that can be true of within our faith traditions. There are emphases, or there are beliefs or tendencies that we don't even notice are there, because we're so used to them. We're so soaked in them. And I think that even something as simple as going into a different worship space within our same faith tradition can bring up a different set of emphases, for example. And certainly encountering a different faith tradition altogether can give us the opportunity to do that. And sometimes I think what it can do is not only help us to understand the themes, the emphases, the beliefs, or the underlying well, themes is just going to have to work in that other religion, but by contrast, it helps us to get a clearer sense of what is happening in our own tradition. And so it gives us a fresher eye with which to see our own tradition. And I think that is a lot of what happens for me, certainly, when I encounter other faith traditions besides my own.
Thank you so much for sharing. Jim, are you?
Yes. Merton is referring to conflicts of doctrine. And a lot of people confuse religion and doctrine, as if religion is only a bunch of doctrines. And when I teach religious studies, I teach 7 dimensions of religion: experiential, ritual, aesthetic, mythological, yes, doctrinal, one of the 7, ethical, and social. And we can interface with people in other religions in all these other dimensions, even if there's areas of doctrine that don't agree.
Thank you. Looks like we might have one more comment. Judy?
Yes. Some of you on this call know that I am an interfaith minister, and I'm currently trying to organize a multi-faith organization in Boone County. But that is not what I'm interested in today. I have been reading for a book study, Thich Nhat Hanh's Living Buddha, Living Christ. And in the foreword, he says, "Nhat Hanh is my brother," wrote Thomas Merton. "We are both monks, and we have lived the monastic life about the same number of years. We are both poets, both existentialists. I have far more in common with Nhat Hanh than I have with many Americans." And this was written when the 2 peacemakers confronted together the catastrophe of the Vietnam War.
Yes.
I just thought I would like to share that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that might be all the comments for now. Mike, did you want to keep going through the rest of the questions, or?
Well, I'm watching the time too. I was wondering if the participants would like to spontaneously respond to one of the other questions about their own experience of being criticized or discriminated against because of their own religious beliefs and worldview, and how you feel and how you handled that.
Would anyone like to respond to that question?
I unmuted because I was going to respond to another question, but
Okay.
I think Jim's comments about the many dimensions of religions and doctrine being only one speak to that, that once you decide you're not there to discuss doctrine, you are there to discuss other things that relate. It really diminishes any kind of criticism or conflict that can develop. I wanted to share a positive aspect of an interreligious encounter. In the interfaith group that I'm a part of, that we've been meeting for so long, we start every meeting with a reflection that we rotate who brings a reflection. And then we ask anyone to share upcoming feast days, festivals, or holy days that are on the calendar of their faith. And we gradually learn about them. And I have learned, I have two favorite Hindu festivals. One is Navaratri, which is a festival of the sacred feminine. And our Hindu member, whom I think is a mystic, tells us how every Hindu home you create an altar to the feminine influences in your life that have had an impact on you. And so at the end of that session, I sent her a Ruth Bader Ginsburg doll and asked her, I would be so honored if she would put it on her altar next year for Navaratri. I knew she was an appreciator of Ruth. And then I've learned about Diwali, which is the Hindu festival of light. And again, so many of the religious traditions has festival of light. I mean, our Christmas is really a festival of the return of the light. And the Jewish faith, of course, has Hanukkah. And so all of those things just give a great richness to, oh yeah, we do that, but we don't do it like you do it. Oh, and how could I enrich my celebration of our festival, our holy day, based on what I see you doing?
Geneva?
Yeah, Norman?
Yeah, hi. You know, there's a, I wonder if it's a tension. As a Jew, I want to say that I think one of the contrasts between Christianity and Judaism may be the accentuation on grace versus, in the Hebrew term tzedek, which many of you may know as tzedakah, charity, but in fact, the actual word is justice. I think Christians place a lot of their faith on the concept of grace, and Jews don't. I think it takes us to the same place, though, and that's what I find so fascinating. So that's my share. And please, I invite anyone to respond. Or
Thank you. Did anyone have any other comments relating to any of these questions or in response to something anyone else has said?
Geneva, I was going to kind of comment, tying so much what we just heard, the similarities, and I think we can say this regarding Merton. What drove him what was his interest? He was well read, not just about understanding contemporary experiences, but also through history. He read the religious traditions through the centuries, knew some of the mystics in all of these traditions. He was seeking truth in all human experience. And he was also identifying the sacred in the human experience, irregardless of our diversity of cultures and race and so forth. They published recently some of Merton's writings and focusing on indigenous people, Native Americans. It's remarkable the depth of Merton's interest and was able to articulate finding commonality again. What is the common ground? What is our common humanity that we all share? Yes, it can be so diverse because of our differences and our experiences, but there was always common ground. And we'll get more into this and showing how the contemplative experience, going deep within ourselves, within our humanity, it will get us to a place that we can see that we can understand. And hopefully through that experience, we can resolve so much of the human conflict and separateness that is going on. But I was hearing this from so many of the participants that are responding to the questions. Okay.
Did you want to take some more comments on this, or do you want to go to the next reading, Mike?
Well, if there's comments to be made, allow it to happen, yes.
I think a few more.
This is Carla. I was just going to comment on the one question. Have you ever been criticized or discriminated against because of your religious beliefs or worldview? And I'll say I have, being an African-American Catholic. That's not as common. So I'll say sometimes it's discrimination with Catholicism, within the religion, and then between Protestants. A lot of times it focuses on Mary and the reverence that Catholics to Mary. But I'll also say other religions have always been very open to me. So it's never been a terribly bad experience, but I do just get a lot of looks sometimes. That's all I was going to share. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Are there any other comments on these questions?
I would like to respond to, I think it was E. And I attended the North Shore Interfaith Institute in Ganges, Michigan. So this was a 2-year program, and I was certified through that as an interfaith minister. What we did was there would be every couple months, there would be a long weekend, and it was presented by a person of a different faith each time. There would be readings afterwards, and then a practice that you could. So I lived for 2 months at a time as a Buddhist, or as a Muslim, or as a Hindu. So, I mean, it was a rich experience to step into those shoes and be there.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Are there any other comments?
I like to comment.
Sure.
I like syncretism. My motto is, why have one religion when you can have several? For my Jewish faith, I draw on kindness, I draw on justice and tikkun olam, repairing the world. For my Christian faith, I add love and forgiveness. From my Buddhist faith, I generate compassion and paying attention. From my Taoist faith, I practice inner peace and flexible strength. From my Muslim faith, I draw kindness and concern for the poor. From my Wiccan faith, I restore closeness to nature and protection for Mother Earth. From my humanist faith, I venture into freedom of thought and building a human community. I celebrate this diversity of religions within myself and among us. And the interesting thing is to try and take part in each of these religions. I often go to a Buddhist Sangha in Indianapolis. Sometimes, recently we've been using the Book of Joy with Archbishop Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And I've actually been leading the Sangha in the discussion. The one interesting thing is Wicca. Am I going to go join a coven? I don't think so. But there's a service that happens in a Unitarian church, an interfaith service, in which we do a winter solstice singing ritual. And I sing in the choir. And it's marvelous to feel our earthiness, our rootedness, our openness to the light. So I have certainly had experiences that come from different religions and feel that I'm enriched by it.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing. Any other comments?
So Geneva, I will just share with the participants who just spoke. I feel I'm becoming more and more multi-faitheded. I have had profound experience attending at Hillel here at Miami University, Shabbat services on Friday. A real connection, especially when some of the prayers are recited in Arabic and the Psalms, and being familiar with them. And also invited to attend with the Muslim students their services on Friday afternoon. Just profound feeling of connectedness and being in sacred space during these religious services, and connecting it to my own experience as a Catholic. The students would chant along with their leader what were prayers in Arabic. Then they would change halfway through their time together to English, and I could really understand the words. And it was so many prayers from the Quran, and I just felt that connection, that these are our brothers and sisters, and again, reemphasize the importance of our common humanity. And we can celebrate our differences in a very positive way. I just wanted to share that.
I'm afraid I need to introduce a rather sour note, and that is that as a woman, in talking about interfaith relations, I have to negotiate the category of being unclean. And I often think that it wouldn't be possible for there to have been a Thomasina Merton, but only a Thomas Merton. And it's that issue which I just have to be bold enough to visit, partly because I have an experience of a very affable Zen monk who talks of weaving his own robe, but as I reach to touch it, moves away because of my uncleanliness. And that, I think, is a real phenomenon that has to be negotiated. And as a Protestant rather than a Catholic, I also have to say that throughout my engagement with other faiths, it does teach me to rejoice at the efforts that my own Protestant denomination has made to make room for women.
Okay, thank you.
I know I want to be mindful of everyone's time, so we're coming up on the hour now. Do we want to look at the second reading?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay, the second reading comes from the preface written by Merton for his book, Mystics and Zen Masters. And it will read similar to what we have already shared in so many ways. But he writes, far from being suspicious of the Oriental, we would now, that's a term used in the 60s, but Eastern mystical traditions, Catholic contemplatives since the Second Vatican Council should be in a position to appreciate the wealth of experience that has accumulated in those traditions. It is in this spirit that the present essays dealing with Oriental religion have been written. He's referring to his work here. The author has attempted not merely to look at these other traditions coldly and objectively from the outside, but in some measure at least to try to share in the values and the experience which they embody. However, aspects of the Christian tradition itself are not neglected. The patristic age, early monasticism, the English mystics, 17th century mystics, Russian Orthodox spirituality, the Shakers, Protestant monastic communities are treated here. All these studies are united by one central concern: to understand various ways in which men of different traditions have conceived the meaning and method of the way, which leads to the highest level of religious or of metaphysical awareness. So the question we have through his writings and letter communications, Merton celebrated and valued human diversity of faith traditions, cultures, and races. What are some ways that we both individually and communally can continue to celebrate human diversity? I think this question has probably already been answered in some ways by the previous sharing, but Geneva, you would do the honors.
Sure. Does anyone have a response to the question? I know some people have stayed unmuted, so it's a little harder for me to tell who would like to speak. So just feel free to jump in. Anyone? Everyone's shy now.
I think.
Mike, maybe you want to offer some leading comments from your perspective?
Well, I just, we are all, not just here in the United States, but around the world, experiencing so much stress due to the negative kinds of human interaction and situations that we're dealing with the environment, with the COVID-19 epidemic, both our human interaction. We have so much work to do, and I think if we had be open to the acceptance of so much of our human diversity and really celebrating it. I think so many of the comments that we heard today from the participants were examples of that. And hopefully we can continue in our families and our communities, both our civil communities, our faith communities, to open ourselves up, go deep within us. And we're going to talk about the contemplative experience more, but I think how we understand what the contemplative experience is, and that is a tool in some ways to allow us to engage in the kind of human interaction that will hopefully have a positive impact on ourselves as the human race and also our planet that we need to care for and so forth. So that's all I have to say, Geneva. Really appreciated all the comments that were made today. I think there's work to be done, and we need to continue it with interfaith dialogue and engagement.
Absolutely. I see Hilda, you unmuted yourself. Did you have something to add?
Well, I'd just like to share what Merton has taught me, really. I haven't mixed with lots of religions. I'm an Anglo-Catholic, so I mixed with both Anglicans and Catholic. I've never, ever had a problem with the fact that I'm a woman. And I would like to say that Merton, main thing that struck me was this idea that we have to decide and come to the knowledge that we're just ordinary people. And also that his other teaching to me as being to accept all humanity, that even if they say they have no religion, still they are our brothers and sisters. And also that we, by experiencing the teaching of other religions, does not mean that we lose the pathway we have come. We have to accept that we have come through the pathway that Jesus has led us. But I believe that Jesus has led us to a point where we can see the teaching of other religions as being things that he would have been able to have understood. We have to remember that some of these religions were 500 years before Christ came, and yes, with the communication and whatnot, he wouldn't have really had much, well, if any, connection with them. But he has shown us a path which can run parallel, and therefore the road to enlightenment for me is through Christianity. To other people it could be through other ways, but I do honestly think we have to come to grips with that the whole of humanity, whatever they are our brothers and sisters. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any other comments?
I just thought I'd mention that the medium in different religions is interesting. The Tao Te Ching is a book of poems, and that's the heart of Taoism. Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, is really good at telling stories. And there's you can get it online, 101 Zen Stories. And one of them is a man is reading from the Christian scriptures to a Buddhist, a Zen master. And the suggestion is that you don't worry about tomorrow. There's enough wrong with today. Look at the birds of the air and the lilies of the field. They toil not, neither do they spin, and yet your Father has made them gloriously arrayed. When the man got finished reading to the monk said, that man is not far from Buddhahood.
Can I tell me? Yeah. Would like to follow up, on what I heard. Basically, we have been using a lot of works, in our dialogue. And I'm associated with some art group, that we use visual images, ceramics and other things, to. I'm proposing that we can, in our future interfaith dialogue, the medium is very important. The medium of using visual arts, the medium of using, non-verbal communication can be a way, to consider, how do, and also another thing is, how about social media? We have a lot of summits, we have a lot of meetings, we have a lot of webinars, can we also use the social media wisely in terms of dialogue? Another thing is about bilateral relationship. We talk about multilateral relationship between different religions. For example, the Catholic and the, with that secretariat for promoting, interfaith and all that. But how about there's also the bilateral relationship between a particular faith tradition, which can produce not only documents, but like joint artistic ventures and things like that, which may be something that stimulate my mind, but I'm not quite sure how practical they are. And some of Merton's action is embodiment of those, both bilateral and multilateral interactions.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? Jonathan, maybe?
Yeah, just it's been lovely hearing. I'm speaking from England, and one of the important things, I'm part of an interfaith group here in Southwest England, and also one of the kind of unifying, quite positive experiences around working together with people of other faiths has been around the whole climate crisis and witnessing to that, and that's been very enriching. Also, just thinking that I'm a priest in small village communities, and just really glad that in our school programs, all the children from age 6 onwards have quite a thorough diet of learning about other faith traditions, and I think that's a really healthy way forward. And I don't know if you get that in your education system. And I guess one thing about Thomas Merton, I discovered him when I was a very young man, and when I found his book, Elected Silence, as it then was, when I was 19, and I thought how old he was. And I've got older. I now think how young he was, and who knows what roads he would have traveled if he had not died at such a young age of sort of whatever it was, 52 or 53. Anyway, good luck with the rest of your election.
Thank you. We'll need it.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any other comments? on this reading or question, or just in general as we start to wrap up?
I just think it's neat.
Geneva, I would like to make a, oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Somebody
sorry.
else speaking.
Jim was saying something, I think.
I think it's neat that Merton found things in other religions and then looked deeper for that kind of thing in his own.
Absolutely. I think that sits at
Yes.
the heart of interfaith work. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
I'm just going to put in a plug for a series of webinars that currently is being sponsored through the Merton Center. If you go to merton.org and go to the International Thomas Merton Society page, you will find Tuesdays with Merton series. The next session is November 10th, and it's Christopher Pamuk is the presenter, and the title is, "What Does God's Gender Have to Do with It? Merton's Awakening to the Feminine Divine." And you can register like you have with this. The previous presenters, there's been 2 of them so far. You could review those. You can click on and you can view it on YouTube. But there's 4 more sessions and the dates are on there. I just wanted to point that out. Go to merton.org, to International Thomas Merton Society. You'll find it.
We can include any of that information in the follow-up email with the recommended reading if you'd like, Mike.
Okay,
If you just send me the links.
Sure will. Well, thank you all for participating. It's been very rich sharing. I wish we were all in person.
Do you have any closing remarks or anything you wanted to add, Mike? Or
That's all. Just, thank you all for registering and participating.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all so much and for your rich comments and dialogue. And you should all receive a follow-up email from me with the recommended reading list and the links and information on our next program. So I hope you'll join us again and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much. And goodbye from Cornwall in England.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
International.
From London.
Goodbye from Somerset.
Oh, wow.
Lovely.
I'm so glad that you could all join us. Have a great day.
God bless.
God bless.
Bye-bye.